Could the Axis have won World War II? The short answer is no. Bar any radical change or a complete restructuring of the country's economy, they were destined to lose. If you want me to cover everything in greater depth, let me know, but for now, I'll keep it simple. For an army to function, you need supplies, support and soldiers. For the Axis powers, each lacked several of these. Nazi Germany had a strong economy, which supplied soldiers with weapons, had the critical majority of public support for the war and a strong military presence. But they had three major issues that crippled any sense of victory. Wunderwaffe, fuel and soldier burnout. Wunderwaffe, or Wonder Weapon, was a Nazi policy chosen by the Führer. This ranged from slightly practical, like the Panzer V, the Panther, or the excessive but useful, like the Schwerer Gustav, an 80 cm artillery railway cannon, or the Bismarck, a massive dreadnought, to the impractical and impossible, like the Sonnengewehr, a theoretical orbital death laser that was made from 9 square kilometers of reflective sodium metal. Next was fuel. Northern Germany has significant amounts of oil and natural gas reserves, as well as the nearby countries, but not enough. The exact numbers are tough to tell, but the rate at which oil and petrol were used by the Wehrmacht and Luftwaffe, the Army and Air Force respectively, was greater than what they were producing or importing from their allies. This is why, during Operation Barbarossa, the Führer ordered the securing of the Caucasus oil fields. To do that, they would need to secure the river city of Stalingrad. Iosif Stalin ordered that the three Russian cities of Stalingrad, Leningrad and Moscow would not be lost, leading to a bitter defense. Last was the army burnout. The key to Nazi success was the Blitzkrieg, lightning warfare policy. This relied on the Army, Air Force and Tank Corps to move in tandem. To keep the operators awake, stimulants were used. Following the stimulant decree, the Army was issued one of two tablets before conflict, Pervitin, or Isofen. For the Air Force, chocolate mixed with Pervitin or straight Pervitin, the pilot's salt, was used. The Armored Corps used Zolt or Panzerschelot. These stimulants worked well in keeping the soldiers awake during the early war. The longer the war took, the greater the strain on their health from repeated drug use. Combined with the Führer's impossible goals, it's clear why they failed. Of the 199 criminals tried in Nuremberg, 1 was freed, 161 served jail time and 37 were executed. Italy's war problems were similar, but their issues were much worse. The National Fascist Party was not widely supported. They were only able to come to power by changing the elective system and then banning any opposition. Then there was the issue of industrial production. Italy did not have the resources needed to be self-sufficient, but il duce ordered autarky, meaning that only Italian companies were able to produce goods. This led to nepotism and corruption. Lastly, the army was competent, but undersupplied. The L3/35 Fiat Tanket, Fiat Revli 35, and the Carcagno M1891 were weaker than their German counterparts, which meant that they were outperformed by the Allies and resistance forces. Combined with the Allied invasion of Italian-American GI in Sicily, it's no surprise that socialists, monarchists and Republican groups revolted against Il Duce. The Nazis attempted to prevent the total Italian collapse by establishing the Italian Socialist Republic, but their army couldn't manage a three-front war. Of the war criminals, 0 were executed or tried for their crimes. Then there was Japan. Comparatively, they unified and industrialized rapidly. They went from an isolationist, agrarian nation to an industrial powerhouse in the span of a generation. The issue was that they lacked the resources Germany or Italy could use, meaning that they needed to get it from the other countries, one way or another. The emperor had near absolute control and support of the empire upon his ascension in 1928. The issue they had was not a lack of soldiers or support but the resources' improper allocation. Since the Battle of Shiroyama, the samurai class was practically broken, having been assimilated by the army. Despite this, inter-clan rivalry remained. This is because much of the army and later the air force hails from the Choshu domain, the land of the Mori clan before the abolition of the Han system. While the navy was predominantly made up of men from the Satsuma domain, the land of the Shimazu clan, and the Shiroyama rebellion. These two clans were incredibly powerful, and prestigious. The Mori were imperial loyalists while the Shimazu acted in their best interests. Now as the Second Sino-Japanese War bled into the Second World War, the Emperor Showa Yamato, also known as Hirohito, was given two military plans, the North Road and the South Road. The North Road saw the military push up through Manchuria to secure the Soviet Far East and Mongolian lands. The South Road saw the Navy secure the resource-rich Spice Islands and much of East Asia. The South Road was chosen as following the failed border skirmishes with the Soviets, the Navy was placed as a focus. Super heavy battleships like the Yamato or the Musashi were built while the Army had to use limited quality steel to make the Type 35 rifle, or the Arisaka Type 99. Weapons whose quality would continue to decrease as resources grew scarcer. Combined with the U.S. intervention following Pearl Harbor, the rate of fuel and weapon production sharply plummeted. After Little Boy and Fat Man bombs were dropped on Japan, the war officially ended. Of the 33 men put on trial for war crimes in the Tokyo trial, 1 was found mentally unfit, 16 were sentenced to life in prison with a chance of parole. 13 were paroled in 1954 to 1956. 7 were hung to death, and 2 died of natural causes during the 2 years the trial lasted. The remaining criminals were pardoned by the US government as to ensure that they would have an ally in the East. But I'll cover the US pardoning war criminals later. TLDR: the Axis lost because they often lacked the fuel and raw resources needed to fight. Italy lacked public confidence while the Nazis in Japan focused their resources on megastructures like the Bismarck or the Yamato. Without those resources, the army ultimately faltered and was crushed under the wave of American and Soviet soldiers. If you want me to cover why each country lost in greater depth, let me know. Check out my YouTube and TikTok, each by the same name. Anyway, now you know the answer to the question.